Okay, just going to keep going. Okay, it looks like we're back.
Waters felt
Yeah, right.
In the labs of engineering at UTS, challenges are met with a resounding yes. This is where pragmatism meets creativity spark. You'll forge a career that leaves a mark.
We could explain how Honda's intelligent self-charging hybrid system improves fuel consumption when compared to petrol grade. Or
Hey, Diane.
Before.
I had a lot of trouble going then. I had to reboot it and replug things in and that, so I had a bit of trouble going live then.
It's not a hybrid, it's a Honda hybrid.
Easy Shed, Aussie-made sheds, straight from the manufacturer, so you save heaps. Easy Shed, make life easy.
if you're unsure or unaware of your eyeglass prescription, or if your prescription changes frequently. Waters felt the weight of cosmic horror settling on his shoulders. Why now?
You could navigate the share market on your own.
Oh, don't tell me to go back to that again.
The wind screamed across the Antarctic wasteland like the dying breath of something ancient and terrible. Sergeant Bruce Waters pulled his tactical goggles down tighter, the ice crystals already forming on the lenses despite the heated elements. 23 years in special forces had taken him to every hellhole on Earth, the scorching deserts of Afghanistan, the humid jungles of Colombia, the urban warfare zones of Syria. But nothing compared to this frozen purgatory at the bottom of the world. The temperature gauge on his wrist read -47 degrees Fahrenheit.
Hey, Phil, good to see you, bro.
Exposed skin in minutes, cold enough to make metal brittle as glass. The kind of cold that reached into your bones and reminded you just how fragile human life really was. ETA 15 minutes to target zone. Corporal Anton Hauser's voice crackled through the comm system, barely audible over the howling storm that had been battering their tracked vehicle for the past 6 hours. The kid was barely 25, fresh-faced despite 3 tours in Iraq. But his tech skills and unshakable nerves under pressure had earned him a spot on this classified mission to the most isolated place on Earth. Waters glanced at his GPS display through the frosted windshield. The coordinates led to Research Station Echo 7, a geological survey outpost that had gone completely dark 6 days ago. The last transmission had been a garbled emergency signal, cut short by what sounded like screaming before the line went dead. Officially, they were here for a routine rescue operation. Unofficially, the brass had been tight-lipped about what they'd actually find, and that silence made Waters' gut twist with familiar dread. Visual on the station, Lieutenant Eamon Messner called out from the passenger seat, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air, despite their vehicle's struggling heating system. Through the blizzard's fury, Waters could make out the dark silhouette of prefabricated buildings, huddled against the ice like frightened animals, seeking shelter from a predator. Dr. Lena Nedrick, the military scientist assigned to their team, leaned forward between the seats. Her thick-rimmed glasses were fogged, and she wiped them nervously with a gloved hand. The seismic readings from this area have been completely unprecedented for weeks, magnitude 4.2 tremors every few hours, but they're not following normal tectonic patterns. Whatever caused the research team to disappear, it's definitely connected to the geological activity. Waters nodded grimly, though something deep in his gut told him this wasn't about earthquakes or normal geological phenomena. The mission briefing back at McMurdo Base had been too vague, too sanitized, with too many classified sections redacted from their operational orders. In his experience, when the Pentagon sent a black ops team to investigate a routine incident in the most remote location on the planet. It was anything but routine. The station's main building loomed ahead through the swirling snow, its windows dark and lifeless as the eyes of a corpse. Solar panels hung at odd angles, some torn completely free by the relentless wind. A communications array lay twisted and broken in the snow, its metal components scattered like the bones of some technological skeleton. Waters killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. Even the howling wind seemed to
Hey,
pause
boss,
for a
good to
moment,
see you, bro.
as if the entire continent was holding its breath, waiting to see what these intruders would discover in this forbidden place. Hauser, get our comms up. I want contact with McMurdo Base every 30 minutes on the dot. Waters checked his M4 rifle one final time, ensuring the cold hadn't affected the firing mechanism. Messner, you're with me on point. Dr. Nedrick, stay close and keep your eyes open for anything that might explain what happened here. The snow crunched under their insulated boots as they approached the main entrance, each step echoing strangely in the thin air. The door hung open, swaying slightly in the wind with a rhythmic creaking that sounded almost like breathing. Ice had formed thick on the threshold.
Hey guys, did you see that Bondi, whatever her name is, the Attorney General? She sent a grand jury to Florida and they're going to take on the Clintons. So it looks like we're going to get some justice here.
But Waters noticed something else that made his blood run cold. Dark stains in the snow that definitely weren't from the storm. The stains formed a trail leading away from the building. And
No, we've had bad weather though,
disappeared
Vars.
Blood,
Today's the first
Messner
clear day we've had for
kneeling
about a
beside one of
week.
the larger stains and pulling off his glove to touch it. Frozen solid, but recent. Maybe 2, 3 days old at most. Waters' combat training kicked into high gear. Whatever had happened here, the research team hadn't just evacuated according to protocol. They'd run, or been dragged. The pattern of the blood suggested violence, struggle, and something that defied his 23 years of military experience.
What?
Inside the station, emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows down the narrow corridors, creating a hellscape of crimson illumination that made everything look like it was bathed in blood. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Computers smashed with what looked like deliberate violence, research papers strewn across the floor and soaked with melted ice, and that same dark staining splattered across the walls in patterns that suggest...
Vars, Australia gets more snow a year than Switzerland. You wouldn't think that about Australia, but we get more snow than Switzerland does.
terror and desperation. Jesus Christ, Hauser whispered, his young face pale in the red glow of the emergency lights. What the hell happened here? Looks like a war zone. Dr. Nedrick moved carefully to one of the few intact computer terminals, her scientific curiosity overriding her obvious fear. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, accessing the station's data logs with practiced efficiency. The research team was studying some kind of massive geological anomaly beneath the ice sheet. Look at this. They were drilling down nearly 2,000 feet when they hit something that shouldn't exist. Waters studied the data scrolling across the screen, his eyes widening as he read the technical reports. Geological surveys, ice core analysis, ground-penetrating radar scans. But one entry made his blood turn to ice. Discovery...
I found it the other day, Vars. I don't know how legit it is. I'm a special forces operator in Antarctica. We found a frozen fallen angel. So it's first, I've watched a bit of it, but I haven't watched much more than about this. So I don't know what's going to come up. I don't know how crazy it's going to get. But if it sounds like crap, you know I'll get rid of it.
Of organic material at depth, 1,147 feet. Specimen appears humanoid. Cellular structure unlike anything in terrestrial database. Recommend immediate extraction and containment. Humanoid? Messner frowned, reading over Waters' shoulder. Out here, buried under 2,000 feet of ice, that's impossible. This ice sheet has been frozen for millions of years. The logs end abruptly 3 days ago, Dr. Nedrick continued, her voice growing more strained as she read further. But look at these readings. Massive electromagnetic disturbances, temperature fluctuations that shouldn't be possible, and something else. The team's psychological evaluations show signs of severe stress, increasing paranoia, and hallucinations. Mass hallucinations affecting the entire research team. A sound suddenly echoed through the station, a low, resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Waters felt it in his bones, a vibration that made his teeth ache and his inner ears struggle to maintain balance. The sound was organic somehow, almost musical, but wrong in a way that made his skin crawl.
Wow.
That's coming from below, Hauser said, his
That's a detail you don't make up.
voice barely above a whisper. From the excavation site. Waters stared at the elevator doors leading to the lower levels, knowing he was about to make a decision that would change everything. We go down. Whatever's down there, whatever they found, we need to know what we're dealing with before we report back to command. The elevator to the lower levels still functioned, though the descent felt like...
Yeah, Vash, you got that Piers map, that Arabic explorer. Piers, his name is, something Piers, I think. That's called the Piers map. And there's Antarctica with no ice on it. And that was 1600s.
Dropping into the mouth of some sleeping giant. The hum grew progressively louder with each floor they descended, and Waters noticed his team's behavior changing in subtle but disturbing ways. Hauser kept glancing nervously over his shoulder as if something was following them. Messner's jaw was clenched tight, his knuckles white as he gripped his rifle. Dr. Nedrick's hands were visibly shaking, and she kept muttering equations under her breath like some kind of protective mantra. Sublevel 7. The elevator announced in a mechanical voice that sounded disturbingly cheerful in the oppressive atmosphere. Excavation level. Please observe all safety protocols. The doors opened with a soft chime to reveal a corridor carved directly from the ancient ice, reinforced with steel supports and lined with powerful floodlights that cast harsh shadows on the crystalline walls. At the far end, massive excavation equipment sat abandoned, drilling rigs, ice melters, and extraction tools worth millions of dollars just left where they stood. Beyond that, through an opening in the ice wall, lay a cavern that seemed to stretch into infinity. My God, Dr. Nedrick breathed, her scientific mind struggling to process what lay before them. In the center of the cavern, partially freed from its prison of ice that had held it for eons, lay something that defied every law of science, every rational explanation, every comfortable assumption about the world they thought they knew. It was humanoid, as the research logs had stated, but massive, easily 12 feet tall from head to toe. Its skin was pale as polished marble, perfect and unblemished, despite being frozen for what must have been millennia. The figure's musculature was perfectly proportioned, like something crafted by a divine sculptor, rather than evolved through natural selection. But it was the wings that made Waters' rational mind rebel against what he was seeing. Enormous wings, easily spanning 20 feet when fully extended, were folded protectively around the figure's torso. The feathers were pristine white, each one perfect and untouched by time or decay. The face was beautiful in an utterly inhuman way, with sharp, aristocratic features that seemed to belong to some perfect ideal of humanity, rather than any actual human being. It's an angel, Hauser whispered, his voice filled with equal parts awe and terror. A real, honest-to-God angel. Waters wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as some elaborate hoax or misidentification, but the evidence was right in front of him. The thing radiated power even in its frozen state, and that hum, that damned otherworldly hum, was definitely coming from it. The air around the creature shimmered with heat distortion, and Waters could feel the temperature rising with each passing second. The research team's notes mention it's been generating consistent electromagnetic pulses, Dr. Nedrick said, her scientific mind desperately trying to process what she was observing. The ice around it has been steadily melting, and the temperature readings show it's generating its own heat source. This is impossible according to everything we know about physics and biology. As if responding to her words, the creature's eyelids fluttered almost imperceptibly. Waters' blood turned to ice in his veins despite the rising temperature. Everyone back to the elevator. Right now. We need to get out of here immediately. But it was too late. The being's eyes opened slowly, deliberately, revealing orbs of brilliant blue light that seemed to contain entire galaxies of malevolent intelligence. The light was so intense it cast everything in the cavern into sharp relief, and Waters felt something pressing against his mind. Alien, vast, and utterly hostile. You should not have come here. A voice spoke directly into his thoughts. bypassing his ears entirely. Now you will share their fate. You will serve our purpose, as they did. The lights went out, plunging them into absolute darkness. The darkness lasted only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When the emergency lighting flickered back on, casting
That was
everything in that
interesting,
hellish red
Voss.
glow, Waters realized they were no longer alone in the cavern. The frozen angel had shifted position, its massive wings now partially unfurled, ice cascading from its marble-perfect form like a waterfall of diamonds. Everyone stay calm, Waters commanded, though his own voice betrayed the fear clawing at his throat. Back away slowly, no sudden movements. But Hauser wasn't listening. The young corporal stood transfixed, staring at the creature with an expression of rapture that made Waters' stomach turn. It's beautiful, Hauser whispered, taking a step forward. It's calling to me. Can't you hear it singing? Hauser, stand down, Waters barked, but the kid kept walking toward the thing, his rifle hanging forgotten at his side. Dr. Nedrick grabbed Waters' arm, her nails digging through his tactical gear. The electromagnetic readings are off the charts. It's doing something to our brains, affecting our neural pathways. We need to get out of here before... A sound erupted from the creature that was part song, part scream, part something that human ears were never meant to process. The ice walls around them began to crack, hairline fractures spreading like spider webs as the sound waves tore through the ancient frozen prison. Waters felt the presence invade his mind again. But this time it wasn't just communication. It was violation. Images flooded his consciousness. A war in the heavens, beings of impossible beauty and terrible power locked in cosmic battle. And then the fall, the long plummet from grace into the frozen wasteland of Earth. He saw the creature's true nature, not an angel, but something that had once been angelic, now twisted by millennia of rage and isolation. It's not alone, Dr. Nedrick gasped, blood trickling from her nose as the mental assault intensified. There are others, dozens of them, buried all across Antarctica. They're all connected, all awakening.
Wow.
Lieutenant Messner had his rifle trained on the creature, but his hands were shaking so violently
This is a month old, guys.
he couldn't aim properly. What do we do, Sarge? Standard protocols don't exactly cover fallen angels. The creature's eyes fixed on Waters, and suddenly he was somewhere else entirely. He stood in a vast chamber made of black ice, surrounded by figures that might have once been human, but were now something else. The missing research team. Their eyes glowed with the same terrible blue light as the creatures, and when they spoke, it was with one voice. We tried to resist, they said in unison, their words echoing from a dozen throats. We tried to run, to warn the world, but it showed us the truth. The old war is not over. Heaven has forgotten us, but we remember. And soon, the world will remember too.
Wow.
Waters blinked, and he was back in the cavern. But now he could see the changes beginning in his team. Hauser's eyes were starting to glow with that same blue light, and he was smiling, a terrible, knowing smile that didn't belong on his young face. The storms are coming, Hauser said, but his voice carried harmonics that made the ice walls sing. Can you feel them? The Antarctic wind is calling its children home. Outside, as if summoned by the creature's awakening, the storm intensified beyond anything they'd experienced. The wind howled with voices, dozens of them, hundreds, all crying out in languages that predated human civilization. The station's hull groaned under the assault, and Waters could hear metal tearing, glass shattering. Communications are down, Messner reported, pressing his earpiece deeper. Complete radio silence. Even the emergency beacon is dead. Dr. Nedrick was frantically working on a handheld device, her fingers flying over the controls. The electromagnetic interference is creating a dead zone, with a radius of at least 50 miles. Even if we could get a signal out, no one would be able to reach us through this storm. The creature began to rise, ice falling away from its massive form like shed skin. As it stood to its full height, Waters realized just how wrong their initial assessment had been. This wasn't just large, it was built for war. Muscle and sinew moved beneath that marble skin with predatory grace. And those wings weren't just for flight. They were weapons, each feather sharp as a blade, each movement calculated and lethal. It's been waiting, Waters realized aloud. All these years, frozen in the ice, it's been waiting for someone to find it. The research team, us, we're not rescuers. We're catalysts. Hauser turned to face them, and Waters saw that the transformation was accelerating. The kid's skin was taking on a pale, translucent quality, and when he spoke, frost formed with each word. The sergeant understands. Good. Understanding makes the transition easier. Transition to what? Messner demanded, his rifle now trained on their compromised teammate. To servants of the fallen, Hauser replied, his voice carrying that terrible harmonic resonance. To soldiers in the war that never ended. Heaven cast us down, but they didn't destroy us. They just gave us time to plan, to prepare, to recruit. The creature spread its wings fully, and the cavern filled with a light that was both beautiful and terrifying. In that radiance, Waters could see the truth of what they were facing. This wasn't just one entity. It was a node in a vast network, connected to others like it across the continent. And as each one awakened, the network grew stronger. How many? Dr. Nedrick whispered, her scientific mind
A lot of jobs are being lost to AI, aren't they?
still trying to quantify the threat, even as her sanity began to fray. 77. The creature spoke for the first time, its voice like music played on instruments of bone and ice. 77 of the fallen, buried beneath your precious research stations, your military bases, your tourist destinations, each one a weapon, each one a key to unlock the prison that has held us for so long. Waters felt the weight of cosmic horror settling on his shoulders. Why now? Why after all this time? Because the world has forgotten its old fears, the creature replied, stepping closer with movements that seemed to bend space around it. Because humanity has grown complacent, thinking itself the master of creation. It is time for a reminder of the true order of things. The mental pressure intensified, and Waters could feel his own thoughts becoming clouded, his will bending toward the creature's influence. But his training kicked in. 23 years of discipline and mental fortitude that had carried him through the worst humanity had to offer. Like hell, he growled, raising his rifle. I don't care what you are or where you came from. My job is to protect this world, and that includes protecting it from you. The creature tilted its head, almost amused. Your weapons cannot harm us, soldier. We are beyond your crude metal and fire. Waters squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked in his hands, and the bullet struck the creature's center mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature looked down at the small hole in its chest, dark fluid seeping out like liquid starlight. Interesting, it said, and Waters could hear actual surprise in its voice. It has been a very long time since something has managed to wound me. But the victory was short-lived. The wound began to close almost immediately, the flesh knitting itself back together with impossible speed. And now the creature was angry. You will pay for that
They can heal themselves like Wolverine.
presumption, it snarled. And suddenly Waters
That's why they lobbed Goliath's head off, so he couldn't regenerate.
was lifted off his feet by an invisible force, his body slamming against the ice wall with bone-jarring impact. Through the haze of pain, he saw Messner opening fire with his own weapon, the muzzle flashes strobing in the cavern like lightning. Some of the bullets found their mark, but the creature barely flinched. Instead, it gestured casually, and Messner's rifle twisted in his hands, the metal growing red-hot until he was forced to drop it with a cry of pain. Dr. Nedrick was backing toward the elevator, her handheld device beeping frantically. I'm reading massive energy spikes from across the continent, she called out. They're all awakening, every single one of them. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with distant thunder. At last, the old bonds are broken. Soon, my brothers and sisters will walk free upon the earth, and the war that began in heaven will find its conclusion here. Waters struggled to his feet, tasting blood in his mouth. Through the cavern opening, he could see the storm reaching impossible intensity. The wind was no longer just howling. It was screaming with voices of the awakened fallen, their combined psychic energy tearing through the atmosphere like a cosmic hurricane. There has to be a way to stop this, he gasped, looking desperately at Dr. Nedrick. Some kind of fail-safe, something the original research team might have... The drilling charges, she interrupted, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. They were using controlled explosives to break through the ice layers. If we could detonate them all at once, bring down the entire cavern, it would bury the creature again. Waters finished, hope flaring
Okay, guys, I'm going to look for something else. This is starting to turn into BS, I reckon.
in his chest. Maybe break the network connection. But Hauser stepped between them and the elevator, his transformation now complete. His skin had turned translucent white. His eyes burned with that terrible blue fire, and when he smiled, his teeth had become sharp as icicles. I can't let you do that, he said, his voice carrying the authority of something far older and more powerful than a 25-year-old corporal from Ohio. The awakening has begun, and nothing you do can stop it now. Behind him, the fallen creature spread its wings wider, preparing for flight. Ice began to crack and fall from the cavern's ceiling as the entire structure destabilized under the psychic assault.
Okay.
Waters made a decision that went against every instinct for self-preservation he'd ever developed. Pulling the pins from 2 grenades, he looked at his compromised teammate with genuine sorrow. "I'm sorry, kid," he said softly. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you." And then he threw himself at Hauser, the armed grenades clutched tight in his fists, knowing that sometimes the only way to win was to ensure that nobody could. The explosion tore through the cavern like the fist of an angry god, a thunderclap that seemed to shake the very foundations of the continent. Waters felt the concussive force lift him off his feet, his body tumbling through superheated air that tasted of ozone and ancient ice, while chunks of debris filled the space around him like deadly snow.
I'm trying to find something
The sound
decent.
was beyond deafening. Not just the twin grenades he detonated, but the anguished scream of the fallen creature as white-hot shrapnel tore through its marble flesh, sending sprays of that otherworldly fluid across the cavern walls like cosmic paint splattered by a mad artist. When the dust finally settled and his ears stopped their agonized ringing, Waters found himself buried under a pile of debris that had once been part of the excavation equipment. His tactical gear was torn in a dozen places, dark stains spreading across the fabric that he hoped was hydraulic fluid rather than his own blood. Every breath sent fire racing through his ribs, and the copper taste in his mouth suggested internal bleeding. But he was alive, which was infinitely more than he'd expected after throwing himself into what should have been a suicide gambit. Through the settling dust and smoke, he could see the creature still standing in the center of the devastation. Its once pristine form was now marred with wounds that leaked that strange starlight fluid, creating puddles of liquid light that seemed to move with their own consciousness. Chunks of its marble flesh hung loose, revealing something beneath that wasn't quite muscle, wasn't quite machinery, but somehow both. But despite the damage, it was still upright, still radiating that terrible presence that made reality itself seem to bend and warp around its towering form.
Oh, man.
Hauser's body lay motionless nearby, half buried under chunks of ice and twisted metal. The transformation that had been overtaking him was frozen in place, his young face caught between human terror and alien serenity. One arm was extended toward the creature, as if he'd been reaching for it when the explosion hit, and Waters felt a stab of guilt that cut deeper than any physical wound.
Geez, I had trouble getting back. I found something else, guys. This is a little bit far-fetched, I think.
We'll have to
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who was able to make war with him?
Time. Yeah, when they started, that sounded like a Stargate movie, didn't it?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. It is my great honor to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, you've been hearing a lot about the Golden Age. Well, tonight, we're going to be unveiling to you the most ancient version of the Golden Age narrative, going back unto the halls of remote antiquity. And the best thing, the broadcast isn't remote because it's happening right now, because we are now
Live. What's up, guys? It's so good to be here once again on Saturday night with you guys. And listen, I'm excited about this show for one reason, one main reason. I'm always excited when David's presenting for the night, but when it's a subject that I know things surrounding all of this, and even maybe people surrounding all of this, but I don't know a lot about this particular subject that David's delving into. And I don't know that there's very many people that have talked about it. So with you guys, I'm going to be very much so listening. And if you guys come up with any clever questions for me to ask David in the chat, I might do so as well. But I'm not going to interrupt them too much tonight because I'm very excited. But thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to ask that if you're not going to stay to the end till we do the Pounders Pound, to go ahead and pound that like button right now. And if you'd like to support us anyway, there's links in the description. You can also go check out David's YouTube channel, David and Donna Carrico, and also Brian Reese over at Underground Church YouTube channel, FOJC. So, David, tell them what you guys got in store for people tomorrow night.
Well, tomorrow night, Brian and I on Sunday Night Live, we're going to do a segue from this teaching tonight. It's called The Wounding of the 18. And we're going to be giving a big spiritual and prophetic and scriptural background to a lot of the things we're talking about tonight. So join us for that at 7 p.m. Central, Underground Church YouTube channel, FOJC. Thank you so much.
Very good, David. And I like I said, guys, I'm excited. So we're not going to waste any more of your precious time, because I know you guys could be anywhere. You could be out clubbing, which thank God you're not, right? I'm glad I'm not doing that. I was just thinking about that the other day. I'm like, what kind of people are these? I love meeting you guys out in public, because most people, that's what they're wanting to do on Saturday night. But you guys are tuned in, wanting to learn. So we're going to take that ride right into midnight. Here we go, David. Let's go.
Thank you very much, John. Well, tonight we're going to be tracing the neo-Nazi movement. And one author, he said, well, it shouldn't be called the neo-Nazi movement or the new Nazi movement, because it was just pretty much run by the Nazis that were with Adolf Hitler in World War II. But we're going to be tracing this neo-Nazi movement post-World War II. We're going to be looking at its structure, but primarily tonight, we're going to be looking at the theology of this movement, the spirituality that this group adhered to. Now, I want to begin here. I want to read something here from a book by Jim Marrs. It's The Rise of the Fourth Reich. I know many of you are familiar with Mr. Marrs. On page 147, he writes this: it is estimated that as many as 100,000 ranking Nazis remained at large after the war. As such, it constitutes one of the largest, best funded, best trained, best equipped, and best connected cults in the world. And that's really something for us to think about. I think we're all familiar and we've heard about the tremendous amount of money and gold that the Nazis made off with at the end of the war. They had millions and probably even billions of dollars. Like Mr. Marrs said, the estimates of the people by the end of the 40s that had went into Argentina were well over 250,000 card-carrying Nazis that went into Argentina and into Chile, where they were able to operate with the protection of those governments. Now, we're going to read something here. So, you know, we have to think, and of course we know about Operation Paperclip, and not only there were about 1,000 high-trained scientists that came into the United States, and probably as many that went into Russia. And I think we're naive to think that those Nazi scientists that worked side by side after they were in Russia and the United States, that there was no collaboration. And to think that there was no collaboration between the leaders in South America and the American and Russian scientists, I think this is also naive. And this began to form what Joseph Farrell referred to as the Nazi International.
Hey, Darren, long time
And I
no
think
see,
this
mate.
is probably a serious version of the deep state. And as we're going to find tonight, there are actually two versions of the deep state that we have to be aware of. Now, this is a book called Vril, Secrets of the Black Sun by David Hatcher Childress. And he introduces a fellow here to us that we're going to be talking about tonight and reading from his material. His name,
Darren, it's like every stream I can do the latest updates in prophecies. It's changing every day.
is Michael Serrano. And he writes here, Serrano claimed that the Aryans were extragalactic beings who founded Hyperborea in the far north and lived the heroic life of Bohatavistas, while the Jews were created by the demiurge and were concerned only with coarse materialism. Serrano claimed that a new golden age can be attained if the Hyperboreans repurify their blood, supposedly in the light of the black sun, and restore their blood memory. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear here. What we're doing here is exposing this. John and I are in no way saying this is good or this is right. We oppose this, and we oppose anti-Semitism in all forms. But to really understand the dynamics of the struggles within the deep state, I think we don't really understand it unless we consider this material. Now, Michael Serrano or Miguel Serrano, and we have some pictures of him here. And he was in the 30s a diplomat in Chile, and he was connected with all of the world governments. He was also for a while the ambassador of Chile to Japan. He was a member of a secret society in Japan called the Order of the Dragon, which was basically the Japanese counterpart to the Thule Society in Germany. And they basically, their entire theology was based around Hyperborea. And it was the dream of Mr. Hitler to contact these Hyperboreans and interbreed the German people with them for the purification of the bloodline. And as we know, and here you see, this is Mr. Serrano at a Nazi rally. He was very openly, he was rabidly in love with Adolf Hitler. As we pursue in our study this evening, we're going to see that they worshiped Adolf Hitler in a satanic mass. They also contacted and channeled Adolf Hitler. They believed he was physically alive, and they also believed that he was their avatar. One of Mr. Serrano's books is Adolf Hitler, the Ultimate Avatar. So to these people, we've talked a lot about the ascended masters on the Midnight Ride. And to these people, Adolf Hitler was their ascended master, just like El Moya or Saint Germain would be to Theosophy. And this is the oldest, this Nordic philosophy is the oldest expression of the Golden Age. Now, Miguel Serrano and this lady here were the two people. This is Savitri Devi and an Indian lady, and Mr. Serrano and Miss Devi, they were the architects of the spirituality of the neo-Nazi movement post-World War II. Now, I'm going to read here from a book called Hitler's Priestesses. This is by Nicholas Goodrich Clark. And it says here on page 5 about Miss Devi, it says Savitri Devi became a...
Thus, they've already subpoenaed the Clintons to a grand jury about the Epstein files.
Heroine
and they're doing it in Florida because that's where Trump's base is. He's Mar-a-Lago.
The neo-Nazi scene. In emotionally laden prose, she transformed the negative attributes of Nazism into a religious cult of cosmic significance. The Third Reich was presented as a rehearsal for the Aryan paradise, and Adolf Hitler was celebrated as an avatar, a supernatural figure whose invention in the cycle of
Diane, we got Sky News. They're an Australian channel. They're like Foxtel, and they told the story about the treason accusations and all that. So it's based in fact. It has reached Australia on Sky News, and Sky News is a popular news channel.
the ages was essential to the restoration of the Golden Age. They believed that the ancient Hyperboreans, that when they were upon the earth, that this was the golden age of mankind. And when the Hyperboreans had to retreat into the heart of the earth, this was like the dark ages of the human race. But they believe through the purification of the blood that they can restore the golden age to the earth. And for those of us that believe in scripture, we can readily see within this the Genesis 6 scenario, the sons of God and the giants of men, and also in our recent midnight ride on the tall whites, we touched upon the Hyperboreans, how it tied into the tall white scenario. Now, this is one of Miguel Serrano's books, The Golden Thread, Esoteric Hitlerism. And I'll read here from page 24. It says, the climate in the inside is an equilibrium. He's speaking of the inside of the earth. The climate in the inside is in equilibrium, as was once that of the outer earth, before the deviation of the axis and the inversion of the poles. There, the solar golden age still exists. In the center of the inner earth, there is a sun, smaller than our sun on the outside. As gravity is less on the inside, the inhabitants are of gigantic stature and they live very long lives. Hitler, young again, still lives. He goes on to say that the first to write about the hollow earth in our times toward the end of the last century and the beginning of ours were American. Also to write was one of Darwin's grandfathers, Erasmus Darwin, in his unusual book, The Golden Age. And we're here tapping into the oldest version of the Golden Age, that it once existed upon the earth, and biblically we would...
No, it didn't say arrested, die. It just said that Clinton, I forget what it said, but it did mention the treason accusations, the Russiagate.
Relate this to the time of the giants, the sons of the God.
And it's on your Fox News.
The daughters of men. And they believe that now this golden age still exists in the heart of the earth, and that through purification of the bloodline, they can bring this golden age to reality here upon the earth.
Sky News is mainstream media, Di. I'll see if I can find
it. Writers, we've studied this very same thing in connection with the European bloodlines and the Merovingians and all of the European dynasties, that they believe that they have to keep their blood pure to keep that spiritual power. And we've talked many times also, this goes all the way back to the starfire, where they believe that the starfire of the goddess was the most pure blood. So it's about blood, and it's in reality what we're talking about Nephilim blood. We're talking about the defilement of the evil ones. Now, I'm going to throw another book. I brought several new books. We'll just hold a second on that. But I'm going to read here from a book called The Religion of the Ancient Egyptians by George Steindorf. Now, it's pretty wild when we hear the ancient Hyperborean legend of the Golden Age, when they believe that there's an...
Di, check this out. This is Sky News. And it says Trump accuses Barack Obama of treason over false Russiagate claims. So they are reporting on it.
Inner sun and life in the heart of the earth. Now, on the Midnight Ride, we've talked a lot of times about the hollow earth, and I'm going to read this from this book to show that not only did the Norse legends believe that, and basically what Miss Devi did, she wedded Hinduism with Norse mythology. And it is really amazing the way she weaved the two together. And this formed the basis of the spirituality of this post-World War II Nazi movement. Now, read here from The Religion of the Ancient Egyptians by Mr. Steindorf, another German fellow, and they believed the very same thing. And on here on page 126, it said, beneath the flat earth lies a second earth named Tawet, a land which, like Egypt, is traversed by a river. On both banks are long passages and deep caverns. These, the dwelling places of the dead. By day, this is a region of dreariness, desolation, and mourning. But by night, when the sun has descended in the west, behind the mythical mountain Manu, the light.
Okay, they're saying about the arrests. They're talking about September for the arrest on the treason stuff.
Shines upon the dead.
And I got that off Fox News and things like that. I don't know how legit it is, but it really does seem like it. And Pam Bondi, is that her name? Pam? She's actually issued subpoenas to the Clintons to go to a court in Florida. So they've actually subpoenaed the Clintons already. So I think it's happening.
And then behold the splendor of Ra. Now, in the Nordic version of the Hyperboreans, we see the Mount Meru. And Miss Devi, she took the Hindu theology.
We'll soon see, though. Gee, I hope he does. I hope he locks them up. I really dislike them people.
With the Norse, and Mount Meru was the sacred mount to them, but the same thing. And this basic understanding of a hollow earth with inhabitants in the inside, this was believed by Norse mythology, by the Far Eastern mythology. You see it in the Egyptian and the Babylonian. They all had this understanding because what they were all talking about was this Genesis 6 scenario, which the Bible unfolds us to as the time when the giants roamed on the earth. Now, this book is entitled Arctos, the Polar Realm by Jocelyn Goodwin. And Miss Goodwin is not a Christian author. And the very first chapter of this book, chapter 1 here, is called The Golden Age. And it again deals with these concepts of the far north and the Golden Age, and how that in the oldest tradition of the Golden Age, this was the Hyperboreans. And I'll read.
Oh, I just realized, guys, that Baron Trump's Miraculous Adventures. Well, hang on.
Here from page.
In that, I forgot what I was going to say.
7.
Oh, that's right. That Baron Trump goes into the inner chambers of the earth, and that's called the Golden Age. Yeah, that's where Trump's getting it from. When his son went into the Hyperborean chambers in that book by whatever his name is. That's probably where Trump's getting the Golden Age from.
From Miss Goodwin's book, and she is spot on here. She really connects it just where it should be connected.
Yeah, I believe it when I see it, though, Di. You're right.
Commanded the power of Vril and possessed the third eye. They did not reproduce sexually, but through plasmic emanation from their own bodies, while through their veins coursed the light of the black sun. Then came the catastrophe, as Genesis 6:4 puts it. The sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The Hyperboreans made the mistake of mingling their blood in intercourse with the demiurge's creatures, and in this sin of racial mixture, paradise was lost. And in the regaining of racial purity, they believe the Golden Age will return. It says here that the Hyperboreans were the ancient white race. We talked about this in connection with our Tall White broadcast. And she says the Thule Society, in this perspective, was a revival of the Hyperborean ideals via Germanic myth and the science of runes. And we have talked a lot about the Thule Society and about the occult connections with Adolf Hitler. And we talked about the Thule Society and how that there was a quite lovely young lady, Maria Orsic, that was the channeler and the main medium in the Thule Society, and even specific plans for German military rocketry and some of their exotic weaponry was claimed to have come from channeled sessions with Maria Orsic. And when things began to go south with the war in World War II, in 1945, Maria Orsic began to announce that she was going to ride a Hanube to the planet Aldebaran. Well, sure enough, she disappeared and was never seen again. But my bets was her new mailing address would have been Antarctica, not the planet Aldebaran. But John, do you have any thoughts so far?
Well, I'm super intrigued by this subject, to say the least, because reading,
it is an interesting subject. I'll agree there.
About places inside the Earth that sounds like what you're reading about right here. So it's intriguing to me. I would love to be able to know as much as I can about the subject. So for me, I'm just really enjoying the subject.
Well, the rumor on that is it's a distraction from the Epstein list, Diane. They're saying they're doing this because he hasn't released the Epstein list.
You're putting off,
and it's a diversion.
I can say that there are so many high-level people that are enveloped in this. Lots of money has gone into this idea, and I can't just blow it off as nonsense. You know, it sounds like a sci-fi novel, but what we're talking about here is basically what drove a lot of these people to do some of the things they did.
Yeah. And, you know, and I know our audience is aware of the power these people had in America and in Russia also, running NASA, running Bell Aeronautics. You know, we could go on and on and on. The people that came over in paperclip, they weren't coming over to work as janitors. They were running. They were all in positions of authority. So we're talking about tremendous power and opportunity. And they always play the long game. They always play the long game. Now we're going to introduce a fellow that many of you are familiar with, and we have to bring this fella in right here and set the table because he figures big in the spirituality of the neo-Nazi movement after World War II. And this, like I say, it was shaped by Miss Debbie and Miguel Serrano. Now, this is John Dee, and John Dee was in the court of Queen Elizabeth, and he was the first guy. He was the one that James Bond 007, he was the first 007, Mr. John Dee. He was an accomplished black magician, and there in the picture to the right, you see him and Edward Kelly summoning a spirit in the graveyard, and his ability, Edward Kelly and John Dee, they said the things they could go into the graveyard and do rituals, and they could scare everybody, I guarantee you. And he also developed what was called the Enochian calls. And the Enochian calls form the basis. They play large in the
language of the fallen angels,
in the ritual magic of the Golden Dawn. Now, also, the things that Mr. Dee did loom large in the spirituality.
Yeah, Francis Bacon said America was going to be the new Atlantis
of neo-Nazi movement of post-World War II. Now, we have here a slide here of the actual Black Mirror. This is in the British Museum.
I reckon Francis Bacon was really Shakespeare.
And you see here the actual Black Mirror and the case, and you see the occult symbolism on top of this case. Here we see there is the
shops.
the crystal ball that John Dee used, and in the British Museum there is the actual black mirror that he used and the case that it was in. Pretty astounding. And I want to read here, and well, let's go first. We want to make clear here, and we want to go to the scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verses 9 and 10. These practices are absolutely condemned by the word of God. We want to make that plain to everybody. This isn't something that John and I would in any way advocate. We openly say that these are the workings of the evil one, and they're condemned in scripture. In Deuteronomy 18, verse 9 and 10, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. And this is exactly what Mr. D had. He had the tools of divination, using there the crystal ball and the black mirror. And the revelations of John D had a big impact upon Miguel Serrano. Now, we'll read here from the Golden Thread by Miguel Serrano. This is on page 34, and he says this.
And thus, the reason he went incognito, Francis Bacon, was because he was writing about whoever was against Queen Elizabeth. He was writing about all that sort of stuff and putting it in his plays. So he was sort of doing, he was doing that.
John Dee, an
That's why he had to hide his name.
alchemist and English mathematician during the 16th century, said that the earth was not round, but concentric at the polar caps. He said that according to mathematical calculations, the earth was not solid, but was a series of spheres superimposed, which made it possible to communicate between the spheres. He tried to convince Queen Elizabeth of England to take over Greenland because this land gave access to a parallel universe. Full stop. And
wow.
This is jaw-dropping. This is jaw-dropping.
And don't them countries have a lot of gnomes and elves and that? Switzerland and all them sort of nations, they've all got little gnomes and elves in their folklore. And he's saying it's a tunnel in Greenland.
Dropping to me. But this is the heart of the spirituality of what the neo-Nazi movement believed. They believed that Greenland was the place where the portal to the parallel universe existed. This is much like Nimrod in Genesis 11 in our Bible. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel, and he built it at a specific place. Now, he wasn't really a dumb guy, and he didn't really believe that he could build a tower so high that he could actually reach into the third heaven. But what he believed was there was a portal there. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to access a portal. Now, based upon the
I never knew that. That's interesting.
Writings and demonic revelations of John Dee, they believed that there was a doorway to the parallel universe in Greenland. Reading on here from Mr. Serrano, he said John Dee received these revelations by concentrating on a black mirror, which we just showed you that is still today in the British Museum, a black sphere that is located today in the British Museum. It is said that John Dee could communicate with extraterrestrials from Hyperborea, beings from inside the Earth and beings from Venus, the morning star. The angels, according to Dee, could...
Venus, the morning star. Remember Valiant Thor, who worked for Congress in the 50s and 60s? He was apparently from Venus and he was a fallen angel. He had an IQ of 1600.
Could pass from the present into the past or into the future. Now, this is just absolutely phenomenal to me. And what Mr. D was doing, he was talking with devils, and he was talking with these ancient Nephilim spirits of the giants, who I absolutely do believe are still in the heart of the earth.
Yeah, I
Now,
do too.
I want to read also here from page 60 of The Golden Thread by Mr. Serrano, and he says this, and this adds, this kind of gives us
Yeah, I think he's got German blood in him. I think you're right.
a big picture of what this movement believed about Greenland. And just like all the way back in the 1500s, in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, John Dee was all about, man, we got to take Greenland. Now, it says here on page 60 of Mr. Serrano's book, but what was done of the survivors of Hyperborea, of those who took refuge in Iceland and Groenlandia, Greenland, the green earth of another time? Did they perish? Did they return to the star of origin, to another constellation closest to the black sun, a reflection of the green ray in their Vimana flyers that go faster than thought, driven by the cosmic music of the spheres? And literally, Greenland was
Okay, this has been a really good one from them. They're not always interesting like this, but it's pretty interesting.
was believed to at once time been a literal green paradise where the Hyperboreans lived. And they believed that there were still Hyperboreans that were actually living in Greenland, where they were there and guarding this gateway to the parallel universe that could be accessed there.
Wow.
Anything to weigh in there, John? Or
Well, that's, I mean, look at what's going on right now. There's something major going on with Greenland. So how can you not see that? I guess it's just, I know you see it, but this is crazy to me. I just never heard this before.
yeah, it's in your face.
Yeah.
It's in your face. And this is we'll give you the documented facts here and you can make your own conclusions. But I mean, this stuff's in your face. Now, on page 59,
What's the matter, man?
Miguel Serrano wrote this. He said, according to the Chaldeans, Hyperborea could only be reached by a secret tunnel in the ice that arrived at the Euphrates. The glaciers melt rapidly after the fourth millennium, and an ocean of mud flood, an ocean of mud prevents all contact with Hyperborea, submerged in catastrophe. The islets of Iceland and Greenland survived, where some Hyperboreans take refuge. So the Chaldeans also, like I said, the Egyptians and the Babylonians, the Sumerians, they all believed also in a half people and entities were living in the heart of the earth. These are the entities that Mr. John Dee claimed to be communicating with. And the Babylonians said,
Yeah, I knew he
that
did
there
die.
was, after this great catastrophe, that
It was on his mother's side, I think.
there was an entrance to Hyperborea by the Euphrates River, and also that the islands there, that Iceland and Greenland survived. Well, let's look at the scripture here, and you know the scripture in the book of Revelation, chapter 6 and verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And I think, John, I'm going to read. I wrote that down wrong. Can you believe I made a mistake?
I can't believe it.
I tell you what, I can't believe it either. But what I want to read here is Revelation chapter 16:12. I just missed it by one letter, folks. But in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12, that was a great scripture, though, by the way. It says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, and the way of the kings of the east, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Now, could we have a connection here with what the Bible says And the ancient Babylonians believed that there at the Euphrates River, there was the ancient portal to Hyperborea. Now, John, I know you've talked a lot. We have here on the Midnight Ride about the drying up the Euphrates. Something going on right now, by the way. But could we have a connection here?
I think so. I think, you know, when we looked at it a couple years
That's a dog crying, not me, guys.
ago, the water had already receded. But I looked at it again just about a month ago, and it's so much further down than it was even when we talked about it before. There's so many weird things surrounding all of that, you know, tunnels that they found, tombs that they found now that it's going down. I mean, who knows what's actually going on when you got that mixed with the four unclean spirits that look like frogs going forth. Who knows what's going on now.
Yeah. Now we're going to look here at some photos of our most northern military base that the United States has in Greenland. It is called the Patufic Space Base. Now, this was named
Bavarian
the
German,
Patufic
okay, yep.
Space Base in 2023. The name of
Yep, he's Bavarian blood. You're right, Di.
before, and still what most people call it, is the Thule Air Base, named after the Thule Society. And this is in the most northern part of Greenland, and this is considered of extreme military importance. And here you see some pictures of that base. And on the next page here, or on the next page, on the next slide, we have here the seal of the, this is the six-headed Hydra seal of the Patufic Space Base. And this is the six-headed Hydra. And this rascal's kind of nasty looking, but this is the emblem of this base, the six-headed Hydra, which also harkens back to ancient times and this ancient mythology. And like I say here, what we're unpacking here, this is the oldest version of the Golden Age theology. It was embraced by the Thule Society there in the early part of the 20th century, but they were drawing it from these ancient texts that had for many millennia talked about the Golden Age in relation to Hyperborea and Thule. Now, we're going to go on to talk about, and well, yeah, here's another. This is a hoot right here. Now, this is the 2020 movie Greenland, and this was something with Gerard Butler. And in this movie, it's about comets, that a big comet that come in and breaks up, and it basically
I watched that movie.
Destroys all of the Earth. But they had a place where the elites could go and survive the comet blast. And guess where it was? It was in that's why they called it Greenland. The place where the elites went was in Greenland, right outside of this Thule military facility. It's quite a movie. And as always, in these things, there is a tremendous amount of predictive programming. Now, here we have a fellow that is familiar to most of you, Mr. Anton LaVey, and there to his right is Susan.
I love what Anton LaVey said on his deathbed. Oh my, what have I done? There's something dreadfully wrong. That's what he said. His last words were that.
Atkins, who was one of the Manson girls. Now, I have been doing exposés on Satanism for decades, and we've been dealing with Satanism and satanic ritual abuse. And the position that I have taken, and the position that most people that were doing what I was doing had taken, is that basically Anton LaVey, who got his training in a circus, he was in the circus literally, and that he was just a showman. You know, it's not good to be a Satanist, but people kind of poo-pooed him as being a serious worker of ritual magic and connected to the hardcore, dangerous satanic groups. Well, I have totally revised my position, and I believe that the picture that was painted of LaVey kind of as a clown and just kind of a jokester, not to be taken seriously, I think it was on purpose, and purposely so that we would not pay attention to the groups that split off of the Church of Satan that Mr. LaVey started, and the groups that come from them. And we're going to be looking at some of the groups that split. And we're going to be looking at it because this is the neo-Nazi underbelly, Nazi Satanism, if you will. Now, Mrs. Atkins made the photo up here because before she became one of the Manson girls, Anton LaVey had a little gig he did in San Francisco. He called it the Topless Witches, and he would perform a witch's Sabbath. And the main attraction in Anton LaVey's witch's Sabbath of his Topless Witches was a woman by the name of Susan King, who was Susan Atkins, the Manson girl. So there were direct connections with Anton LaVey and the Manson group. And I want to read here from a book called The Black Sun by Nicholas Goodrich Clark. And we'll see some of these other connections. It says here, in the late 1940s, LaVey was already corresponding with Jack Parsons, a Crowley Lodge leader in Pasadena, and he frequented a branch of the Church of Thelema in Berkeley, California in 1951. Now, let's just think about it. In the 40s, it was 1967 when Anton LaVey declared the Age of Satan there in San Francisco. But in the 40s, he was connected with Jack Parsons. That was back before many people even knew who Jack Parsons was. And he was attending these occult lodge meetings all the way back to 1951. So we got serious connections with LaVey, with Jack Parsons, with the OTO, these Thelemic lodges. Now, in 1961, LaVey and Anger, we're talking about Kenneth Anger. It says Parsons' close associate, who enjoyed cult status in Hollywood for underground films such as Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, 1954, based on Crowley and his own visit to the Abbey of Thelema at Salafu. So we're talking about people like Mr. Anger, that were directly connected with
Good night, Phil. God bless, mate.
Connections with the OTO, direct connections with the Rocket Man himself, Jack Parsons, which brings in Paperclip and the whole Nazi bailiwick. In 1961, in 1961, LaVey and Anger began hosting regular parties in San Francisco for friends interested in magic and the supernatural. This magic circle was the precursor of the Church of Satan. So what we have before Mr. LaVey rolled out the Church of Satan, and I think basically the whole thing was misdirection to keep everybody focused. That's what magic is. It's misdirection. And they wanted everyone to think LaVey was a clown, that this wasn't even really a serious, hardcore, dark stuff. But I think with rethinking this thing, I think LaVey was a serious occult player. I think that this was all orchestrated so that we would not pay attention to these groups that broke off from the Church of Satan, which we're going to look at here just in a moment.
You mentioned their association with Hollywood, and of course we know Manson and all of their people's association with Hollywood, but it really makes you ponder when you start hearing about things like Diddy, for instance.
Yeah.
This ideal of contracting people, but through means of, they get power through this, but through means of humiliation and ritual. Probably they called them freak-offs. That's what Diddy called them. But before Diddy, there was people that did it to Diddy, right? This is a common thing in Hollywood, and what people don't realize is this kind of stuff is kind of where it all kind of kicked off even harder. These people are associated with the power might of Hollywood and of the music industry and of every industry in general. Even people don't believe this, but they'll find out. But the mainstream pastors, these pastors that are famous and allowed to be promoted by everyone, there's a handler there too, and people don't know about that, but they'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. Now in this, and of course, Jane Mansfield, who met an untimely death. She was a member of LaVey's Church of Satan. So was Sammy
Yeah, Diane, you said your internet's been playing up.
Davis Jr. And
maybe that's what's happening.
With Kenneth Anger, we have people like Mick Jagger, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. We have direct contacts. People connected in there would be Dennis Hopper, the Mamas and the Papas, gaggles of people there in that rock music scene. So we have connections here that go in to the deepest part of the dark culture that was developing here in our land. Now, I'll give you just a little flavor of the Nazi flavor. This is something few people know about, but Mr. Clark writes about this on page 214 of his book. This just gives us an idea of the Nazi flavor of the Church of Satan. He writes here, an overall debt to Crowleyan magic is attributed to Anger's involvement, but LaVey was also drawn to the evil aura of the Third Reich. The Church of Satan's law of the
that's what I thought, though. You said that yesterday.
The Nazi anthem, Germany Awake.
So did mine. This is my 4th attempt at going live today. It wouldn't let me go live. So it looks like everyone's getting affected.
Awake to what? Well, maybe the Golden Age, huh? Written by Dietrich Eckart, alongside garbled references to the Vril Thule and the Anahambre. LaVey claims that the Die Ecclestein Vorsiepel rituals were based on the distorted angles of German expressionist film and performed in Nazi Germany by the elite of the SS. So the connections with Mr. LaVey, with the neo-Nazi spirituality, and with the very most hardcore groups, they are there. They are there. The Manson family, OTO, you name it, he was hooked in. So that's why I am totally revising my opinion of Mr. LaVey. I think this picture of him that was portrayed as a comic, kind of a comic opera clown from the circus, I think that was on purpose. I think it was absolutely on purpose. Now, this is one of the groups that broke away from the Church of Satan, the Order of the Black Ram. It was founded in Detroit by Douglas Robbins.
They've done that to you before, Diane, stopped your posts and stuff.
And with the Order of the Black Ram, this here is a picture here of altar and symbolism. It was full-blown neo-Nazi Satanism with no veils. There's no effort here to hold back some kind of veneer of cordiality. It was full-blown Nazi Satanism. And it was mild compared to this group we're going to be talking about. This next group here. Well, before we go there, we've got to talk about this guy before we talk about the other group. This fellow we know is Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino, who broke away from Anton LaVey. There's a photo on the internet of Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino and Sammy Davis Jr., who was a member of the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and all of them, Dean Martin. Well, yeah, Sammy Davis Jr. was a full-blown Satanist. And here on the other side, you see him there. I that's either his wife or his daughter. But the Temple of Set began, and Mr. Aquino believed that he had received direct revelations from Satan. Of course he did. And he adopted all of this neo-Nazi symbolism. Now, he was so far into it. Here in this next slide, we're going to look at the castle where Mr. Aquino went to work what he called his Wulisburg working. He actually went to this castle, and this castle is the actual castle where Himmler had the headquarters of the
Man, I'd love to explore that castle.
Nazi SS. And it was set up.
Not for the Nazi stuff, just to see how they build it. I love old buildings like that.
Where Mr. Himmler did occult rituals and satanic rituals, might as well call it while it is, here in the Wewelsburg Castle. Now, I'll read a little bit about this from a book called Painted Black by Karl Raschke. And on page 147, he said this. He says, in the autumn of 1981, Aquino wrote and circulated within the Temple of Set a document known as the Wewelsburg Working. A working in the magical lexicon is a set of ritual acts that allegedly influence future events. It is like a time release capsule on the astral plane. Now, that's something to think about for a minute. A time release capsule on the astral plane. It says Aquino carried out this particular working at the North Tower of the Wewelsburg Castle in Westphalia, Germany, where Nazi SS leader Heinrich Himmler had supposedly outfitted a chamber to conduct black magic in order to enhance the outcome of World War.
I've seen the room in that castle that had the black sun on it. It was on the floor. It was in black marble, I think.
Too. Well, that didn't work out too good for them, did it? But they're not giving up. That's the thing. And it says Aquino reviews how he tracked down the legends and found the place so as to rekindle for the world once again the flame of Hitlerian occultism. Now, most people don't know what Hitlerian occultism is, but this is exactly what Miss Debbie and Miguel Serrano put together post-World War II, where they actually worshiped Hitler in a black mass. They literally considered Hitler an avatar, and they connected and communicated with him on the astral plane. Now, I'm not saying this is real. I believe they were doing it, but they were talking to devils. Let's make this clear. And they were very much made the claims that Hitler wasn't dead for many, many years. And I, for one, do believe that body they found in the bunker there in the Berlin, I do not believe that that was Adolf Hitler. I do believe that he survived and continued on for several years in South America. I just hope the old guy's dead now. You know, I just really hope he is. But this is the Satanism, and basically all Satanism, you cannot consider it as anything but Nazi Satanism.
Good night, Dolly.
Because from the largest satanic organizations, the Church of Satan with LaVey, the Temple of Set, and you just pick one. They were all deep into this Hitler spirituality, esoteric Hitlerism, I guess is the term they use, and they all believed that the golden age of Thule would return. And this was the whole thing of the Wewelsburg working with Aquino and the Temple of Set. And as many of you know, Michael Aquino worked in the Pentagon. He worked on these remote viewing esoteric programs the Pentagon has. He was one of the pioneers of it. He had elite security clearance in the Pentagon while he was doing this wackadoodle satanic rituals there in these Nazi castles. So that kind of shows you how things come down here in the good old USA.
Guys,
now, this fella here,
I might start rounding it down now and play something light. I'm not light, but you'll see what I mean. Yeah, that'll do.
First, the massive hot blob was moving towards the East Coast, but then another earthquake struck right in the same location.
An earthquake has been reported in New Jersey, just miles away from New York City.
So now we got to look into the deeper aspect of what's going on with this heat blob And basically, this is connected to magma. And if you look on Live Science, there was a model about these 2 continent-sized hot blobs that were in Africa underneath and then in the Pacific. And what do these things cause in the long term? Well, when you look deeper into it, it potentially caused eruptions based on Discover magazine. Live Science says the same exact thing. So what we're going to do here is we're also seeing a shift in magma with Yellowstone that connects with the hot blobs. And there's also at nature.com, geofluid mapping reveals a connection between magma fluids and earthquakes. So wherever this magma shifts, we start to have earthquakes occur as well. You can see from this study, all the red is magma ascent, and you can see all the green is where earthquakes occur. And this was done over studies in the Pacific, also in multiple locations. So this is why we must keep an eye on this. And I'm gonna give you the subsurface stressed zones, wherever you're on the West Coast, on the East Coast. I'm gonna give you all the information. So you're gonna wanna stick around and hear all of this. First though, we had a 2.7 hit right next to Ramapo Fault. And remember, Ramapo Fault is not even the only thing there. We are just now finding out that there was another fault that they found out was there. And look at it right here on screen.
Why are you following us?
Just tracing the drain.
What about your dream?
Move to Europe. What now?
Why not?
Stop me. I hate ice cream. I'm done with stops. I'm an ice cream man. Train. Vegetables.
This was right here, the Colombian geologist Dr. Valery Kalawali. The data produced by the quake could be invaluable, he said. He and his colleagues published this data, a report identifying the new fault in Hunterdon County. And look, never before they discovered it. This is new in New Jersey. Using machine learning and network of seismometers installed after the last spring's magnitude 4.8, they connected more than 1,000 tiny aftershocks to pinpoint the new fault's location. So this is going to tell them in the future about a lot of different things coming. So this is something we have to continue to watch, a new fault that is in that area. And he's basically saying that the faults are producing these earthquakes, and they got some of the oldest faults in the East Coast. Now, going back to that hot blob that was coming all across, all the way into New York, researchers in Rutgers was already saying that a mass of warm rock was rising beneath in New England. And this came from New England all the way to New York over time. We showed you Earth scope and the Central Appalachian Anomaly and then the Northern Appalachian Anomaly. So where these things lead to, we can connect a lot of earthquakes and shifts, subsurface stress. I got all the information though for you with the subsurface stress coming up here in just a second. So subscribe for all the new details. But first, let's get into Yellowstone. They told us a little bit earlier on, but we missed this. A lot of us missed it, that we now know where the magma is shifting in Yellowstone, and it's shifting northeast. So what I did for everybody here is I made a model based off of USGS data so that you can see where this shift is going. And if you look on screen here, this is the official National Park Service map. And if you look at this is where the new projected northeast magma shift risk zone is. And if you're in this risk zone, look on screen here, we're going to tell you, you got MT right here, Montana, North Dakota, we got Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's because the caldera now is shifting magma northeast, and this is going to be something that, I mean, I feel a lot of people didn't even understand or pay attention to. Let's read a little bit of this right here. A new topographic study from scientists at the University of Texas used earthquake waves that flash through the Earth's outer core to improve resolution of seismic velocity within deep Earth. They found evidence for a plume 350 kilometers diameter extending from one core to the mantle boundary, and a Yellowstone source of heat. And if you look on here, you can see some of that. These are some of the studies that went back even further here. You can see the mantle plume all the way beneath Yellowstone now. This northeast way it's going stretches all the way into Canada as well. What they did though, they went out there and they used these vibrator machines. I know most of y'all are gonna be like, what are you saying? Yeah, they actually vibrate the earth and they cause their own mini earthquakes. But when they're doing that, they have this seismic detector of visibrosis, how you says rig at the work in Yellowstone National Park, avoid disturbing park visitors. And what they do is they propagate artificial seismic waves through the ground at nighttime, and then they'll be at the Yellowstone Park getting that data so they can understand, okay, so now we can see a little bit under there. And I know a lot of y'all say, oh, well, is that safe there? From what they say, accordingly it is, but let's see what you say in the comment section here. Now, moving into a very stressed zones and where the magma blob is going, let's read a little bit more about the magma blob from Live Scientists people. Blobs are hot
Well,
regions
man,
at the
come
bottom
on
of the
up,
Earth's mantle,
down, jump.
about 2,000
Come on.
kilometers to 3,000
Leave me
kilometers
halfway.
depth, which might be composed of different material compared with surrounding mantle rock. Scientists have long known about these two hot regions under the Pacific Ocean and Africa. And now we're talking about in New York, where these blobs basically have possibly existed. They're saying for hundreds and millions of years, but they're starting to shift and move around. And you can see right here where the blob is, and then the plume tail and the plume head, and it comes all the way up to the gigantic volcano, and that's when it erupts. But there's no sign accordingly right now for eruptions. Now check this out. So if the data shows us from USGS models and everything else that subsurface stress can happen from this heat because the heat and the rock and the mantle and everything together. So that's why you need to read this right here. We got this from GFZDE, update for world map of tectonic stress. So subscribe right now. We're going to be giving all these regional location information for you that a lot of people probably ain't paying attention to. Now you need to look at this really closely here. The colors indicate three classic stress regimes, and it goes into red indicates normal faulting stress. So you can see where red is. You can see along the west coast, we got some that along the Latin America area, but let's go a little bit deeper here. Green are strike slip stress, and you can see green is along the east coast of the United States. And again, with the blue, then we got thrust faulting stress. And you're like, what is that? What is that?
Australia's the only continent not on this fire rim.
So I'm gonna show you this on the screen right here. You got a normal fault, which you can see how it's sliding away. You got the reverse fault, and then you got the strike slip, which is going straight, and then the other side going the other way. And a lot of these plate detachments as well, we mashed up a map of the plate detachment. So if you're on the East Coast, yes, you do have a lot of those areas that doesn't have normal stress. And you say, well, what is causing that? There's a researcher coming out in Queensland, a mining data informed better understanding of underground stress. He's coming out and saying that a lot of the stuff that's happening, he says earthquakes don't always come from nature. Sometimes we cause them, Dr. Wahabi says. So a lot of the areas where it's not normal stress faulting, they're gathering data.
Yeah, they're referring to magma, yep.
Right now, Dr. Wahabi said the mining data, which was analyzed remotely, would lead to pinpoint vulnerable areas that could potentially trigger earthquakes. We're going to grab this man's data as soon as he comes out with it and make sure we relate that straight to you right away. Because again, when we looked at some of these regions, a lot of people wasn't paying attention to it. And again, I'm going to show you some more stuff that people wasn't really paying attention to. And again, this is where Yellowstone is at right here. And since we know the magma has shifted northeast, it's not the same how we thought it was going to be. We can also see the plate motion here. This is USGS data. So this is giving us insight on the regions that's not just being struck as people look at the earthquake and say, oh, well, that was just a 2.7. Yeah, with heat and magma moving, with blobs of plume and everything else moving underneath the surface. So it's really important that we look at this at a more detailed scenario here. Because I just did the one video, massive next. Watch next, massive hot block moving beneath East Coast. So that was really important there. And again, we're gonna have that more information coming out on that. And we got some people here in the comments who've been telling us a lot of situations going on in their area. So if you've seen anything in your localized area that you feel is out of normal, you can definitely give it to us at jackson2447@gmail.com, and we drop in the chat the last video I did, because that hugely links in. Now let's not leave yet, because now that we know that this connects to earthquakes, this specific zone we're going to look at right here, let's look a little bit deeper, because the epicenter now of New York, where the magma is flowing, and all the other regions, this is being pushed up and it's sliding through and moving. And some people say, oh, well, it's happened for so long. Yes, it has. And now we're moving into a level of the shift where we need to watch where this magma goes. And the problem with this magma is they don't give us live model updates, so we can't get live models weekly. They'll tell you like, well, we over 2 years, it took them 2 years actually to go out. Like after maybe it was like 2020 or something, 2023, they gave us a model a couple years after that. So these things are not commonly updated, which I think should be a huge thing that would be a big part of public safety. What do you think? So this is going to be something that over the weeks and months and course of time, we're going to definitely have an evolving plan to be looking at and strategize on. So I want you right now, though, if you just tuned in, to definitely subscribe, hit us with a like, because we're doing the work for the people. And if you look in the live chat, watch the next video. That was the first video to this that broke, which New York Post actually took my title and then used it.
Welcome to the Institute.
It started with an earthquake that hit New Jersey and was felt in New York, but it didn't just stop there.
It's centered right around Hasbrook Heights, Rana. It happened just before 10:20.
Wow. Trump, I bet they don't usually get tornadoes.
What was that?
But a little bit before that happened, something was announced that was happening inside the United States, and it was spreading towards New York. This came from the Appalachian Mountains. And what we're going to show you on screen here is a map that is showing how far this massive blob is stretching. It's hundreds of kilometers wide. It's from Earth scope, and it's deeper than 75 kilometers. And you can see on the west side here, that is where Yellowstone's magma activity is. So this is magma activity on the other side. So what you want to understand, people want to ask, well, where is this going? How many states of the stretch? We're going to get to all the information. This thing is about 200
Doesn't it?
wide. And so Live Science dropped some footage here. We're going to, just the maps, we're going to show you that right now, where it stretched from. Look on screen right here. First, it came from Greenland. If you're looking right here on the map, Greenland, North American Rift Zone, where it first came. And they said this has been happening for a while now. And then it slid down in toward the Northern Appalachian Anomaly. And if you look on screen here, you can see where it says CAA, which is the Central Appalachian Anomaly, and NAA is the Northern Appalachian Anomaly. Now, when the earthquake struck, here's the interesting details here. When the earthquake struck, it was right over here next to a zone where a fault line was at. So this fault line was called Ramapo fault line. So it struck a little bit east of it, though. It didn't strike right there on the fault line, but it was right next to it. And here's what people don't get, is along all these zones where we're just mentioning this is happening at, it's not just that fault, it's Hopewell fault, There's another fault right there that intersects. But Yellowstone is another situation here. If you look right here, you can see that close along these areas, we do have some Yellowstone hotspots. So I got a lot more information for you to watch out for. You need to subscribe right now because we're also seeing them do new surveys quietly
Okay, it's called yellow. Oh, look, hang
on
on.
the Cascadia subduction zone.
It's called Yellowstone. So does that mean the stones there are yellow? I never thought of that before, but he just mentioned it.
And I'm going to get you to all that. So what's happening? This is magma under New York that is coming in from the Appalachians here in the National Park Service. You can see how far that the Appalachian Mountains stretch. The problem is it's intersecting with a lot of other fault lines. And so what's happening here is this magma below the East Coast is now challenging what scientists and geologists believed in the first place. They didn't even think that this would be a thing. Well, let's read this. Rumpole Fault System is a network of faults primarily in northern New Jersey and southeastern New York, extending to Pennsylvania. It is known as one of the oldest fault systems in the northeastern U.S. and is associated with past and recent earthquake activity. So we're going to give you some of the things that you need to be looking for over the next days, weeks, and months. So yes, magma activity is definitely increasing and is on the move.
Get travel insurance fast. Travel with confidence on your next holiday. Buy travel insurance and compare the market. Simples.
Nature Valley, country by nature.
Now, looking at this map, we're going to take you to another one right here. And this one is from EarthScope once again. And we're going to show you, look at this on the map. So what the hot block represents, and you can see the thermal areas like EarthScope showed you, the lower seismic velocity zones, which is hotter, weaker, partially molten, or thermally altered crust, high heat flow, tectonic instability. We're looking at lower density, hot material can soften the crust, reducing its ability to absorb tectonic stress. How could this affect New York and the neighboring regions? We're telling you that right now. New York, New Jersey, PA lie on faulted Precambrian basement rock. The older faults can be reactivated with thermal shifts. USGS notes that the intraplate zones, like the eastern U.S., can experience rare but damaging quakes. Presence of heat anomalies can activate ancient fault systems, especially along the Rumpole Fault, New Jersey, New York, or Western Quebec seismic zone.
I bet that blows when they finally give Palestine their own land. I bet all these volcanoes will go off then.
Which you're seeing like all on the screen here right now. And the question is here, why did just recently we get this information here? That's the question. What do you think in the comment section? So will extinct volcanoes on East Coast in the U.S. erupt again? There's the geologists are saying no. But when we read a little bit more later, we'll give you what they have been saying. While New York is not known for active volcanoes, geologists' studies have revealed a large blob of hot molten rock magma beneath the northeastern United States, including parts of New England and potentially extending under western New York. The magma is not currently erupting. It's not considered a typical volcano in the way Yellowstone is, but its presence challenges existing geological models. So this tells us right now that we need to really be on watch, just to be aware of these situations here at hand. Now, moving on into this situation here, right here, this is what you need to know, because the zones that you're in currently, we're going to give you all the information on that, these thermal situations that you need to be looking at. So write it down, take a picture, whatever you do. The NAA is the Northern Appalachian Anomaly area shown on the map, centered in the northeastern United States, around eastern New York, western Massachusetts, and southern Vermont, extending slightly into southern Quebec and New Hampshire. So once again, we're putting this right here because that's what CAA is, right close to the fault. You see NAA, which is Northern Appalachian Anomaly, and this is where the heat blobs have moved in. The thermal movement is happening. Now, I want to take you into something else that's happened that nobody's really been telling you about. NOAA Incident Take Authorization Scripps Institution Oceanographic Geophysical Surveys in the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Nobody really knew that they did this survey. This survey was done on 7/21/2025. So this was under like a week ago where they went out there and they surveyed. They said it was for the humpback whales that's been disappearing and everything like that. However, this was an unusual mortality event where along the West Coast, a lot of these whales were, their population of migration was plummeting. No official data has come out on why. A lot of people think it's because of frequency sound, toxicity in the ocean, but they have not come out. However, they're surveilling the subduction zone where we just had the 4.3 earthquake hit in California. You can see right here on the map with the nautical lines within the USA, and a reawakening fault just came back up over here on Time Magazine. We was talking about that just a day ago. So North Pacific Ocean NOAA Fisheries is requesting comments on this proposal.
Oh, that's how come. Okay.
Harassment authorization. Incidentally, take marine mammals.
Because I didn't know of a rock that was yellow. That's why I was wondering about it. I've never seen an actual yellow rock. That's why I asked.
Them to specify activities. NOAA Fisheries is requesting comments on possible one-time, one-year renewal could be issued under certain circumstances, and if all requirements are met as described, request for public comments and end of this notice. NOAA Fisheries will consider public comments prior to making any final decision on the issuance requested by MMPA authorization. Agency responses will be summarized in the final notice of our decision. So we have not got a notice about any situations yet. This is why this is a situation currently ongoing as beneath the United States. The flowing magma is happening. There's not any eruptions happening at all. This is just highlighting what scientists know is moving below the United States as we speak here. The intersection of this, though, like we said, is the biggest problem that right now we're looking at. And over the next course of weeks, is going to be monitoring activities. Stay subscribed, stay tuned. But we got even more information that all these current regions as we speak right now.
In an ideal world, John wouldn't have accidentally deleted his spreadsheet this morning, then blamed Alison in an accidental all-staff email. Thank goodness for You Foods. It's real food for the real world. You Foods.
It's
Should we start that podcast? Definitely.
Get on the market.
That you look at on screen, you can see how more areas even go into Florida down there where you see the thermal activity there looks like it's a little bit red. This is from EarthScope. Most of all the blue areas over there you see is kind of Midwest United States, and we still do have a fault line crack there, which we have some people still going to be getting with us on those situations here. Now, the big thing that I was doing, I was putting this out the other day, this was highly critical report because it was a giant ripple wave that opened in California and Yellowstone magma shifted. So again, you have to click that on the other side of the channel here because that's going to be highly important. Do not let that be hidden. But the biggest thing that people have issues with, they don't disappear from mainly the catastrophe, mainly disappear because communicable diseases and outbreaks start to happen more after the follow-up situation. So that's why through my research over the last 8+ years, the JWTV Natural Herbal Guide, what we have is the BioShield. We created 2 ebooks for 2 multiple scenarios, so you have in the back pocket. And what we have is a 40% off deal if you get both of those in your cart, if you haven't bought both of them. But if you just get one of them, it's just a $15 deal that's going on. So you can look in the live chat and you can get that right now, right away. We cover all the different stuff for multiple events coming. We've looked at what potentially could come through the Agenda 2030. And we dive deep into the
okay, guys, I'm out. God bless.
A lot of stuff together. as well as looking at the parasitic versions of what happens from me being a Hurricane Katrina and experience the parasitic infection, understanding how things actually go. So we put